Selamat pagi, Ibu Bapak. Selamat pagi, Ibu Bapak. Terima kasih. Saya Angela Simatupang, mewakili IAI Indonesia. Senang sekali bisa berkumpul kita pagi hari ini untuk mendengarkan sebuah webinar yang sangat menarik mengenai Augmented Intelligence in Internal Auditing, yaitu automated testing. Saya rasa kita sudah sangat sadar bahwa automation saat ini sangat penting ya. Bukan saja dari dulu kita sudah lihat pergerakannya untuk bisa membuat audit kita menjadi lebih baik dan lebih efisien, dan terutama lagi dengan tatanan hidup baru kita ya, yang banyak menuntut untuk banyak virtual dan lain-lain. Saya rasa automation juga menjadi sangat penting. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Mouri-san. Thank you very much for being able to spare your time, your valuable time, to meet all of us here, the profession of internal auditing in Indonesia. And Pak Fandhy, thank you also for becoming the moderator of this important discussion. We all believe that automation is key to improving efficiency and effectiveness audit. And I think this session will give the professions in Indonesia how to roll on the automation of the audit testing, how we can meet the IT challenges, what kind of benefit it is, and how it's really improving the efficiency and the effectiveness of audit. Thank you, Pak Fandhy. Mouri-san.
You're welcome. Fandhy, go ahead.
Terima kasih Bu Angela. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Very good Wednesday morning to all participants, including Mouri-san, Pak Hari Setianto. Saya lihat sudah datang juga.
Ya, selamat pagi Pak Fandhy. Sukses.
Pagi Pak. And also to all members of IAI Indonesia and governors who is also joining us today. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semua. So I hope everyone, wherever you are, whether you are in the office like me today, or maybe you are at home, or maybe still on the road, yeah. I hope all of you is in a good shape today, as we are still in a pandemic condition and still need to maintain a new normal protocol. So as your facilitator and moderator today, I will be guiding you throughout this session. My name is Fandhy Siregar, as Ibu Angela mentioned. I am the Secretary of IAI Indonesia. For those who are from banking industry, maybe you might already familiar with me. And for the rest, let me humbly greet all of you as my new friend today. So our session today is kind of special one because we call it as International eLearning Session, and we have international key persons. And our topic today is automation of audit testing. As Ibu Angela already explained, we will see how advanced technology like augmented intelligence will significantly boost the IA performance, and what is the consideration of implementing such initiatives. And of course, another key takeaways that we will get from our speaker today. I also like to inform you that IA has also released the Global Perspective and Insights, or GPI, for IA Artificial Intelligence Auditing Framework. So for those who are IA members, you are very privileged to get this kind of GPI documents, yeah, for the implementation of AI auditing framework. So, okay, let me introduce to our distinguished speaker today. In my opinion, is one of the Jedi in internal auditing. I was actually a moderator for his session in Bali in IA International Conference in 2018. Now I will be moderating his session again, but this time in webinar. His name is Mr. Naohiro Mouri. So please show the, okay. So as you can see on the screen, we call him Mouri-san. Mouri-san is the Executive Vice President and Chief Auditor of AIG. AIG is one of the biggest insurance company. Mouri was the chairman of the board of the IA from 2018-2019. So he's now the past chairman of the board of the IA. So Bapak Ibu sekalian, we are now learning from one of the highest ranking officer in IA. And long before that, Mouri was the first president of ACIA, or Asian Confederation of IA, serving from 2001 to 2006. You can also find several books co-authored by him, and he's actively lecturing in several universities like Meiji University Graduate Program and also Senshu University. So good morning, Mouri-san.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you for having me here. Good morning to our colleagues and friends at the IIA Indonesia. Sorry, I forgot to shave this morning because this is the result of me working in the American time zone, because my usual place of work is in New York City, but because of the pandemic, I am back to Tokyo working in US time zone. So to say the least, I actually work in the night shift most of the time. And in fact, I was actually working throughout the night, and I barely got a few hours sleep before getting on this call. So I apologize that my appearance is not as sharp as what it should be. But no, it is great to actually see you on screen. Hopefully it was actually a physical presence. I hope you can see my batik. I'm proudly wearing this batik that I was presented from your esteemed institute when I spoke at your great conference in Bali. It's already been 2 years ago, right? So
Yes.
I mean, time passes so quickly, and as Fandhy indicated that he has actually moderated me back at that conference, and then so he's actually trying to do that again on the digital meet. So thank you so much. Terima kasih. So
yeah.
Anyway, so the topic today, without overdue, I think is on everyone's radar. The presentation that I am going to go through with you is the one that I presented at the General Auditor meeting for the IIA Global. So this topic is actually very current. And it is also throughout the world that people do talk about the automation, and particularly in this pandemic era, everyone's working from home. And to be honest, I have 400 auditors under me at AIG. Every one of them, including myself, are working from home. No one's attending to the office. And yet, we are actually able to proceed with audit engagements, and we continue to issue audit reports. And we continue to be able to test things through different means. So, thanks to the power of internet and data mining and also automation, and this actually makes it possible. Right. So, just to get you some administrative stuff before I actually get started. So those who actually have questions, please do send it in through chat. And Fandhy will gather all the questions. At the end, we will have Q&A sessions. During my presentation, I may already answer your question. So just hold off your questions and send it in through chat so that we'll be able to collate all of them and then be able to actually answer any questions you have I'm sure that you have tons of questions about the augmented intelligence and automation. So will you put on the slides for me, please?
Let me explain in Bahasa Mouri for the session rules first. Oke, Bapak Ibu sekalian, seperti yang sudah disampaikan Mouri tadi, silakan bisa menginput pertanyaan melalui chat ya. Bapak Ibu bisa lihat ada tombol chat di situ dan Anda bisa input pertanyaan, nanti kita akan come back untuk membahas pertanyaan Anda. Dan nanti kita akan sampaikan 5 polling, hasil polling juga pollingnya Anda bisa ikuti ya, ada 5 polling dan mohon bisa menginput semua sesuai dengan pertanyaan yang akan ditampilkan. So time is your, Mouri-san.
Thank you so much. So if you could just put on my slides, please. Okay. Go to the next slide, please. This is just the first page. Okay. So when we talk about artificial intelligence or AI, to be honest, this is probably what most of you think about AI. Right? You know what this is, right? This is Terminator. Coming from the future, the machine takes over human and then start killing human. And at the end, it's a machine against human. What we're talking about, this is obviously not the future that I expect it to happen. As you know, thank you. What I actually want to talk about is augmented intelligence. That stands for AI, not artificial intelligence. And this is where I expect the future to be. And this is the one that actually makes all of us happy, not machine taking over our job and then, we lose our job to machine and the society is run by machine. That's really not what we're actually trying to do, in this context. And I don't think that makes anyone happy. Well, except machine doesn't have the emotion. So I'm not sure whether machine can feel things. Perhaps in 30 years or 50 years, machine can develop its own sensory and then emotions. But what we're actually looking at is human and machine working together. And machine does what they're really good at, and that helps human auditors, because we're focusing this discussion to internal audit. So human auditors does what he or she is really good at, because at the end of the day, audit needs to be done by human, and machine will augment what they're really good at, because in many cases, humans break down things that dealing with large amount of data, monotonous processes, testing. And, when we talk about moving from sample-based testing to full population testing, human cannot possibly continue to sustain testing for such a long time as, compared to machine. Take for example, even, the current work that we do, can you think about work without computer? It's on everyone's desk. When you look for something that you forgot, what do? You Google, right? Instead of going to encyclopedia or go to dictionary, you just pick up your phone and PC and then go to Google. That's already augmenting your intelligence. If you can't remember the name of the song or the movie that you wish to actually see, you go to those movie.com or the word search. That's already augmented intelligence. Right? Your banking transaction, your ticket booking, everything is augmented by machine. So whether you know it or not, we are already in this era of augmented intelligence. And I'm sure that you all use Amazon and other means to buy things. And if you notice, they know what your buying pattern is, and then they will recommend you. Even the Kindle will recommend you the books that you should actually read, or things that people actually prefer to read certain type of books, and then they will actually give you like 5 different selection of this is what you should be reading. Do you think humans are doing it? No. It's the artificial intelligence that's augmenting your intelligence. So it's here. So whether you deny or not, it's already here, right? So the best way to deal with it is to work with it, take the best out of it, take advantage of what's out there. So that's really what I'm going to talk about. And there are certain things that we need to pay attention to in doing that. Next slide, please. Okay, so before I jump into what is augmented intelligence, I just want to set the tone. I'm sure that many of you play chess, and Gary Kasparov was beaten by the IBM's Deep Blue computer. This was back in 1997. And with 3 amateur players, not even the expert player, amateur. Okay, and so this is really, how well. I mean, this is already 13 years ago that they've actually achieved the concept of machine and human working together, and then achieving some really extreme result in defeating the world best grandmaster of chess player. So, I mean, the image of Centaur, which is really the machine and the man and horse combined. But that's pretty much what I think. What we need to think about in the future, that human is augmented by machine. Next slide, please.
Next slide, Paiko.
Yes, can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, and just just be academic, as we all somewhat academic doing in internal audit. So the American Medical Association, which is obviously the expert in looking at these things, they do have the definition of what is augmented intelligence, which is AI. When I refer to AI, I actually refer to augmented intelligence. It's an assistive role. So they're not driving what needs to be done, but they enhance human intelligence. So, it's almost like, I don't know if you know movie Matrix. The Keanu Reeves. It's a little old movie, but I think they're making the new one now. When they actually when Keanu Reeves trying to learn like karate and jiu-jitsu, what they do is that they plug data into his, I guess, brain, and then that actually helps him immediately do things, right? I mean, it's almost feels like that in the world, where machine is actually augmenting and assisting what we're lacking. Okay, and there's no way that they will be replacing human internal auditors. And so this is a very important and critical point that I actually want to stress when we talk about augmented intelligence. They're always assistive role. Next slide, please. the reason why I say that they cannot replace human is because internal audit is not completely science. It's a combination of science and art. You may actually feel somewhat strange when I talk about internal audit as an art. So what I mean by art is, yes, we test things, based on science. It's a transaction that we look at. It's the control and policies. Those are logical part of internal audit. And then, the result comes out and clearly we have issues. But when you put issues in context, it's not always science. There's a qualitative part of the internal audit that kicks in. The science is quantitative part. It can all be resolved by the mathematics or the logics. But there's an illogical part in terms of why things happen, the root cause. Very often, management oversight, even though there's a policies and procedures, people just didn't do it. Why? Because they just simply forgot. Is this logical? Not really. But that's because it's human. People do things, right? That's not logical. And how we communicate that issue to another human, that's not always science. Because people have feelings. They have emotions. And that's not always logical. And that's not always scientific. And that's not always quantitative. And that's the part that I refer to as art. Because if you don't communicate in the right mode, in the right detail, people may not actually hear things that you're trying to convey. They hear what you say, but they may not actually understand. And that's a failed audit from my perspective. Because audit is here to find things and effect changes for the organization to enhance its control, right? That's why my view of audit is it's a science combined with art. And that makes complete audit. And that brings the insight where the science and art meets to the organization and make the processes better so that organization will achieve its objective, whether it's to maximize your profit, minimize your cost, or deliver the objective of what has been set as an organization. Okay, this concept may be slightly different and difficult for you, but this is my view of internal audit. Okay, next slide, please. So, what is the auditing in current state? Even though I actually said that, yes, augmented intelligence is everywhere, but still, I mean, we are still using very much of traditional, paper and pencil, and many of them are actually database, but how much of that is still in progress? And everyone talks about using data analytics, automation, using natural language processing, data mining. When you actually ask people, how much are you actually doing it? Even to my peers in large insurance companies, how much are they actually leveraging these tools or these methodologies to automate and augment the current audit processes? I would say that it's still very much in progress. And I have not actually seen anyone who's completely automated and using augmented tools to their day-to-day audit processes. Yes, they do actually use them, here and there, and then start winning the results and finding things that they have not been able to find in the past. But that still takes a lot more efforts and then initiative to actually go and do things. So next slide, please. Okay, here's what I see, what we're facing with. So I call that problem statement. It's not necessarily a problem to some people, but this is what I see that we are up against. So currently, we spend a lot of time to collect data and collate them for planning and testing, okay? Yes, data is scattered everywhere. And, you know, unless you are very small and very simple company, organization like mine that has over 50,000 employees operating in 70 different countries and selling a barrage of insurance products, whether it's a general insurance, life and retirement products, it takes lots of effort to collect and collate data, and then making sure that those are clean data, right? Because right now, my guys are spending about 70% of the time getting the data, cleaning the data before they can do something. So that would actually force us with a finite time in audit to analyze data and communicate them to stakeholders, which is, to me, it's the most beneficial part, right? Getting the data, sorting it, and then testing it is the first step. And it's the fundamental step, but it doesn't actually bring value in itself because it's the process. But what comes out from the process and analyzing them and putting in trend and understanding why things are happening makes lots of sense to the stakeholders for us to actually have good conversation and communicate them. And because we spend so much time collecting data and collating them, that actually put us very little time on doing this, very valuable and really time-consuming effort. Currently, we're still doing mix of sample-based testing, largely sample-based testing, and some full population testing. Full population testing by design or definition is that you test everything that is there rather than taking a small sample from the entire population. That would enable us to find things that we were not able to find before. So take, for example, like my audit shop, we audit high-risk areas typically every year. So 12 months in, right? So if we actually take the entire 12 months from last year to this year, we can look at everything that we have. But because of the time constraints, we may actually choose to test the most recent 3 months. So we leave out the last 9 months untouched. And we take sample from the most recent 3 months to understand the processes and decide whether the process is designed properly and then effective. Now that actually creates the problem for us, which is an audit risk. The risk of not being able to find things when risk actually exists. The only way to deal with the audit risk, in my opinion, is to test everything that's possible. Obviously, there are certain limitations as to what we can do, because if it's only exists in paper, the manual processes, that's not in the application, the system processes, it's very difficult for us to actually gain the data. So I'm only talking about the population where data is on technology and it's digital data that we have access to. But more and more business or stakeholders are waking up and moving things into digital or automated processes so that it allows us to test greater population of the scope. Also, we're spending a lot of time on delivering audit products because of the point that I made on the first, time to collect data, analyze. Typically, my audit shop takes anywhere between 70 to 90 days to deliver a single audit report. Okay, that's testing about 2 dozens of controls and having conversation and writing reports, clearing issues with the remediation included. That's taking a little too long for us because from the time that we start audit and by the time that we deliver audit results, stakeholders have already forgotten what we're doing, after 3 months. So we need to shorten the time. And the only way to do that is to test faster and then or test all the time. And that actually have the data analytics or automation comes in. And we also are under pressure to reduce cost because as you and I know that audit is a pure cost, right? It's almost like insurance policy for the company to be able to find things and then correct, self-correct itself. But under the current economic environment, everyone's looking at reducing the cost, right? So how do we actually reduce the cost? The biggest cost factor, at least for us, internal auditors, is human cost, right? So if we reduce auditor, then by design, it limits the amount of work that we can do and it reduces the hours. So how do we actually gain greater coverage with reduced hours? And the only answer to that is you use machine to help us. And last but not least, and the most important point that I actually want to make is, as we all experience this rapid change in the paradigm that has shifted because of the COVID-19 situation. We did not expect in the beginning of the year that the society changes this much and the way that we operate has impacted so much. I have been working from home since the middle of March. And I actually don't know when it ends. To be honest, we'll talk about a little bit on the new normal later, but I expect this situation of working from home will be somewhat the new normal because we can. And fortunately, or unfortunately, because of the COVID, and we were forced all to work from home. And we've always talked about work-life balance, working from home, and how difficult it is, but it can be done. Obviously, is it ideal? Perhaps not, but can we actually make it ideal? Absolutely yes. So, and this actually allows us to operate with a flexible working arrangements and being able to actually access directly to data that stakeholder has, depending on the organization and then how you set it up, but at least we can achieve to a certain level. I'm not denying that, we need to go back to office. I think we need to at some point because there's a human element that needs the better communication, face-to-face communication, rather than the talking to people over the screen. And the from the management point of view, we do need to have people gather together in one place rather than talking to them over the screen. But being able to actually adapt quickly, keeping up with all the rapid changes of the risks that is emerging in the surface of the world, clearly we need some tool. And that tool to us is the machine augmentation that I feel will help us. Okay. Fandhy, do you want to run the poll at this point?
Yes, I think we have one polling already got the result. Please, Pak Pitoyo, to show the first poll result.
Is it coming out now?
Yes, we still in progress. 120 from 192, but I think we are going to have the almost the correct final answer, which is option A. Limitation of the capable persons to run the analytics is the biggest challenge according to the participants.
Okay.
And option C is the second biggest challenge, limitation of companies' infrastructure.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we're still counting.
Yeah, I can resonate to that very much. It's spot on that we feel that that's really limiting us quite a bit. And also, yes, I expected the people to respond on the investment cost. It's not free. It does actually cost, and I will talk a little bit about that later on. And yes, the big data is hard to tackle as well. So, this is a very good response. So thank you so much. Okay. So can we go to the next slide, please?
Okay, we go to next slide, Pak Pitoyo.
Okay, so I'm sure that many of you have seen this maturity curve. So this is the artificial intelligence, not the augmented intelligence maturity curve, but it's actually synonymous. So we start with maturity level 1, MS Office, Excel, Word, and Excel is a great tool, and it's so great that it's been abused, in my opinion. And because we create so many spreadsheets that that itself become the problem, because it's called end user computing, and you don't protect cells, and you actually miscalculate things, and then you'll never be able to find things. But that's a good start, and that does actually help us put things in there. And by the way, I'd also put the ACL in between maturity level 1 and then maturity level 2. I don't know, ACL, or I guess the idea, those data analytics tool, but very much infancy. It's infancy. It's very easy to use. tools and data crunching tool. It has a lot of bells and whistles that are needed for internal audit. And they've actually developed many macros for us to use as an internal auditor. So we're actually using ACL quite a bit. Obviously, you can only use them for the structured data, meaning that you can't really use them for the like emails, the contracts. But if the data is in database, you can certainly download them, slice and dice it in a different way, and then test it with the parameter that you set, and that would actually help you to test things that you wanted to test. And it has the flexible expandability, so that Excel does have certain limitation as to how much data that they can process. ACL and IDEA really take out that limitation, and you can certainly reuse them quite a bit. And the beauty of those tools are that it doesn't actually tamper the original data. So it actually copies data and then brings it over, and then you can actually do slice and dice it and analyze it in a different way. So you can test different things with that data that's available. So on the maturity level 2, this is the data visualization. And this is where you will bring in a tool like Blue Prism and the Click View, and then Tableau. Those tools are available, very easy to use, and put those data analytics. It's more about data analytics visualization part, but to put it into the graphs, charts, so that everyone can actually understand what that data actually means. If it's actually the random list of numbers, it's very difficult to actually see it. But if you put it into the graphics, it actually highlights what you have to focus on, particularly on the pie charts. Graphs are very effective tool for you to demonstrate that where you want to focus on things, and then what issues that you found, and bring it out in front of your stakeholders. And it's very easy to understand. They will actually get it. The picture tells 1,000 words, and that is very true. And we've experimented this a lot. Now we actually do include visual like charts and the graphs into the audit reports. That helps people to actually see things and help really not convince, but help convey the issues and the root cause to people. And that would actually lead to the maturity level 3 full population. So this is not just testing full population, but having direct access to the source data. So typically when you audit, you collect and correlate data from your stakeholder. They'll give you the data, but you never know that the data has been altered or adjusted, right? Coming directly from the stakeholder. So if you go to the source data of the applications or systems that they're using, typically those data do not actually have anything adjusted. So it's a raw data, but it's actually true data coming directly from the technology and application. And then, so you will download those data and for the entire population that you want to test. And so you will actually use them and in a way that you want them to use. And clearly, you can compare and contrast what stakeholder information that they would provide to you versus the source data, and then you can find the difference. And if there's any adjustments, and that's where it could be an audit issue, it could be a fraud, and that's the type of things that you can actually look at. And this is full population, it's not sample based. So you can check anything and everything, and you can create a trend, you can create analysis based on the data that's available. But this maturity requires the right infrastructure and data architecture and understanding of what the data that you're actually dealing with. So it is not easy, and it takes a lot of effort getting up to this level. And on the maturity level 4, this is robotic process automation. That's what RPA stands for. And the optical character recognition, OCR, right? So this is really getting into true augmented intelligence. Machine start to test, they run testing program by having you push the button, and then they run it for you for the structured data. And for unstructured data, they can also run the OCR, scan documents, and then do the word search using the natural language processing application. And so you can deal with both structured and unstructured data in this maturity. This requires lots of investment and using the tools like the Blue Prism and then the other RPA tool to build tools. It takes time. And you have to have really in-depth understanding of what technology architecture is with your stakeholder and data architecture in order to build RPA. And I will talk about this a little later on RPA. Right now, we're actually AIG is at this level, and we are finding things that we never thought that we'll have problems with. And so later on, clearly, I will talk about that. And maturity level 5 is embedded. Things that embedded test modules, and so this, when I talk about embedded test modules, what it means is that when your stakeholder introduce or implement new application, audit testing module is already there. So when the application has been developed, we work with the stakeholder to develop audit module. So anytime, all the time, we actually get the test result directly coming from that application. And that's what I mean by embedded test modules. So we don't have to ask data. We have direct access to those data. And we can test anytime, all the time. If you use SAP or other large application, they already have this embedded test modules. You need to look at what that does and whether that actually suits the need of your purpose. And it does cost, but it's actually much quicker than getting the having you to build tools, because they've already built tools for you to use it. All you have to do is just access to that, and then work with technology to get direct access so that you will have the testing results at your fingertip. And of course, the last and I guess ultimate level of artificial intelligence, which I'm not necessarily sure we will get there anytime soon, at least perhaps not in my lifetime, I assume, is user pattern recognition rather than explicit instruction. So machine, what does this mean? Machine will start thinking like human auditor. They will come up with testing algorithm by themselves, and they will write it and they will test it, and they will report it, and they will communicate it. Okay, so you know, this is the whole new ball game, and this is not the one that I expect that it will actually come in anytime soon. But you know, clearly, if you're a small company, if you're only looking at certain controls, perhaps this may be the future for you. Not in the far future. Okay, you will find this maturity roadmap elsewhere. So I've just used it, the one that's available. This one I've actually taken it from E&Y, but I'm sure that other guys actually, you know, have similar roadmap as well, and they all talk about the similar steps that are going through. Next slide, please. Okay, so I guess I spend a lot of time in there. So some of the considerations that in terms of using augmented intelligence or bots or even ACL. So cost, you know, clearly the winning part is the augmented tools does cost, but it actually machine, all you have to do is supply electricity, and they work 24/7, and the speed of crunching numbers are much greater than human, and they're error-free as long as the algorithm is written well without any bugs, because machine is as good as what human create, right? So I mean, that's what we find it, and you know, they don't actually complain overtime, and they don't actually take vacation. So it's good that you know, we have them helping us crunching large amount of data. Productivity clearly is something that we need to look at, and the machine. I mean, you know, they just do it with the right speed. And obviously the limitation is the capacity of the computing power, right? So if you give them more computing power, they will actually crunch numbers. You know, so that actually takes out all the mundane testing work, you know, performance recalculations where machine can take it. So human can spend more time analyzing, communicating, and helping the stakeholder to come up with the solution. And the quality obviously is something that we're always concerned about. As I said, machine will repeat doing things that you tell them to. As long as you write the code without any bug, right? They're error-free in a sense. But if you have a bug, they will actually keep making mistakes. So you do need to, you know, make sure that the algorithm that you write, I mean, even ACL, right? It's not, you know, to the extent of writing the code. You know, put some certain procedures, write it. You want to make sure that you back test it so that it's error-free. But because when you do that, you will find things that you will never be able to find, you know, based on the sample-based testing. Because then when you use machine, that means that you actually test full population. Everything that you need to test, you can test. And you will find things. I guarantee you. Okay, no matter how small it is. And machine doesn't make error, unfortunately, right? It's the beauty about the machine, right? Because human created the machine for error-free, so that actually helps us doing that. Okay, so that actually allows us full population testing, continuous auditing, testing anytime, all the time. All you do is press the button, and then machine will run it for you. Now, human will actually use the result to analyze and communicate. So that's really augmenting what you do. And that would actually allow you to provide real-time or near-time advice and insight to the business, depending on what you want to test, how you want to test it, because you're potentially seeing very similar thing that business or your stakeholders are seeing when they manage their businesses or when they manage their activities, right? It's no longer looking at the past history. You're potentially looking at the current activities. Or potentially, if we actually push this forward, we can predict from the past history to what could potentially happen in the future. Okay, so we may be actually able to predict with certainty about what could potentially happen in the future if we get really good at it. Go to the next slide, please. So,
Right.
Go ahead, Fandhy. Now, do you want to do the poll at this point, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, I think we could go back to the maturity slide, because there are a couple of questions regarding the maturity and
Okay.
also the polling for the maturity. Pak Pitoyo, please show us.
Okay.
Yeah, Pak Eko, could you please show the polling for the maturity? Right, because there's a couple of delay now, I think we can just go on, Mouri.
Yep. Okay.
Please, Pak Eko, from the last page.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So a few things that you do need to pay attention to, and in terms of doing things right on the implementing augmented intelligence, or what I call it, the bots creation or data analytics to help the human auditors, is, first of all, you have to have the right vision and strategy. You can't do this ad hoc, and this isn't really a single product or single project that would end in 3 months. So you have to have long-term vision as to where you want to go over the next 3 to 5 years. And you have to understand what your current state is and what are the opportunities, what are the funding that you have, because it does actually cost. And it has to be sustainable, right? Because you can't do this in 6 months and then you decide not to do that. You will waste lots of effort and time and money. So if you want to do this, you really have to set 3 to 5 years vision and strategy as to where you want to go after 3 to 5 years and where you want to be in year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. Okay? Because otherwise you will be lost in just spending money and listening to a few vendors, who does this, and then, they can't deliver certain things, and then, they can do things, and, you will confuse your team and your management. So this has to be a very concrete and fundamental element, that you have to have vision and strategy, very clear vision and strategy, and you have to stick to it. Okay. And so stakeholder support. Now when you actually set the vision and strategy, it requires stakeholders cooperation, because we will be using their data, right? And we will actually need technology support in implementing this. So clearly you want the audit committee, you want your fellow executive leadership team and you want the majority of stakeholder to buy in from what you're doing. And by the way, your stakeholders may already be doing data analytics and automation. So they may actually know these things much better than you do. And in those cases, because we find that as well, you can certainly work with them, piggyback with what they've already been doing, rather than you reinventing the wheel. Because they have their own vision about what they want to do, where they want to use the data analytics and automation, and reducing the cost, and really maximizing the use of data. So you may actually only have to partner with your stakeholder where you want to implement the augmented intelligence or data analytics and automation, and work with IT. And clearly, people are very important element. You have to bring people with you to understand and bring them, with, and having them buying for the vision, strategy, and you have to continue to train them. Because this is somewhat different idea from the traditional auditing, where you actually keep your heads down and then you roll up your sleeve and then flip the transaction documents. You let machine do this. So you have to actually understand where the risk is, how to audit them, and then how we actually use the data to test them, and what to test, and most importantly, why do you want to test certain things? So it requires the mindset change for your auditor and how they behave. And this is a continuous effort. And it will not, it's not just one time that you actually do this. You have to continue to train them. You have to continue to upgrade them. And in some cases, if it doesn't work, then you have to actually bring in new people to do things. Okay. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, Mouri, I think we are ready for the result for the second poll. Regarding the maturity, I think you would like to see what is the most maturity level in Indonesian companies and institutions. Please show Pak Eko or Pak Pitoyo.
Okay.
Okay. We are now waiting for the result. So we are seeing the 6th level now. And okay.
So Fandhy, you're smiling, which means the result seems to be good.
Yeah, I think based on the result, we are standing at the first 3 levels, Mouri.
Well, which is what I suspected. And by the way, it's actually consistent to what I understand in majority of the world. So very few has gone to level 4 and level 5, and definitely not level 6.
Yeah, so we have some audience stating that they are in level 4 and level 5. This is quite interesting for us.
Right. I mean, so you also have to understand the nature of the business or nature of the activities that your organization is doing, right? Because if you are startup high-tech company, it's actually easier for you to do level 4 and level 5 because you're typically single process company, and that's driven by the technology, right? So all you have to do is just work with the these business people to embed the processes. So voila, you're already in level 5. as opposed to, you're working in heavy industry where, your company has existed for last 70 to 100 years. And, there's a bunch of manual processes, machineries, and, you tend to find that, you're at level 1 or 2, at most level 3. So, there's clear differences, coming from the industry and also the nature of the work that the company organization does. So.
Yep, agree with you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for showing the result. Now we can we can continue the presentation, Mouri.
Okay, great. So if you could go back to, yes, and then go to the next slide, please. Okay, so other consideration that you need to think about is the process. And, this is, I alluded to this a little bit, I touched on this a little bit, but the auditor, when you actually dig down deeper and trying to create the data analytics and bots, they really need to understand the process in detail. What I mean by detail is that what accounts in technology, the application that they are accessing, what reports and what frequency and what data. Typically, you do not get this type of in-depth data through the regular sample-based testing. And in many cases, even the stakeholders aren't able to answer some of the questions in detail because it's so technical. Because they may not actually know which page of the technology that they would go to and what accounts. Because you need to actually have the accounts information in order to access directly to the technology. So it's a combination of you have to have the good detailed business requirements information, and clearly once you build the bots, you have to actually go through the right cadence for coding and then the user acceptance testing to ensure that what you build is properly operating. You don't want to create rogue data analytics tool or bots that start walking around and then spreading the data to outside. And rogue bots are very difficult to adjust because that requires a change management. Change management is another key to maintain those tools, because underlying technologies or applications continue to change. And if you don't adjust those changes for the tools that you build, then your tool becomes obsolete. It becomes irrelevant and starts producing wrong results. And that would actually damage your reputation as using the wrong tool and coming up with the wrong result. Okay, so technology, obviously selecting an appropriate tool, and this is the important part about the auditor's mindset. They need to trust what they see the result coming out from the tool, because auditors by design are very skeptical. We all practice professional skepticism, right? But we actually have to test and retest and make sure that we all understand that what the limitation of the tools, but at the same time we all also have to trust once we feel comfortable trusting them. But once again, change management is the key, and so that is the key to the trust. And overall governance, you obviously want to create the standards, guidelines, steering committee, and this may not be just the internal audit itself, but also if your organization has augmented intelligence or bots, data analytics, standards, guidelines, steering committee, it's a good idea to be part of it, because you don't want to create separate standards and guidelines and procedures. And also roles and responsibilities need to be very clear. So just in our case, in AIG, we decided not to create our own data sets, because then if we actually create data sets, we have to maintain them. So we actually work with technology, and everything that we create will go through technology, our IT department, and they will have the clear change management processes because they know all the changes that are going through. So that actually helps us not to create shadow IT for ourselves. So go to the next page, please. Okay, so here's the some elements that you need to actually look at. This is the more of creating bots and you know, moving from sort of a basic explorer and analytics specialist. So this is more or less our definition of you know, what skills and what uses and who's actually going to be doing it. So for us, the basic is Excel and you know, data manipulation, full population. Clearly, you know, we can use it with Excel for the structured data, very simple ones. So every auditor can do this. We set Explorer more advanced Excel concepts, like, you know, Power Pivots are very simple, I mean, in my opinion, but you know, clearly it's a gateway to the next level for data visualization using Power BI and the Tableau and, you know, things like that. More visualization tool that helps to actually communicate your issue. And clearly full population is the must, right? So when we use tool, then we'll test full population, clearly. And, you know, with the visualization. So this one, every auditor, we expect them to actually have. Now, we also have analytics specialists. So this is a little more advanced. So they can have direct access to database, automation. They can do the, you know, more advanced ACL tool, because ACL does a lot of stuff. So as idea. And use with the data, large data sets, and the, you know, they can help other auditors to extract data if they need to and perform complex tasks to create algorithm. And you know, we obviously don't want every auditor doing different things, so we are actually having the uniform and consistent approach in terms of data analytics and creating bots. So these guys actually drive and help the other auditor to see things that they don't see. So this is the small subset of the auditors that we have, and they specialize in the data analytics and bots creation. And you know, we actually have the innovation team, and they actually belong to this innovation team and pushing things forward. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a typical bots creation processes. So just this is more advanced, but so we have, you know, we identify opportunities, and then typically like 5 to 7 days. Ideal, usually takes a little longer, but you know, so requirements are gathered. Talking to process owners, the business requirements are being documented. This is very, very, very important part because if you get the wrong information on BLD, then you create the wrong, you know, it's garbage in and garbage out. So this requirements and technical design process is really the key for success of creating right bots. And of course, you know, identifying opportunity is really the you know, key as well. And so we do have SME subject matter experts within our audit team who can help auditor to identify and then work with the specialist who can help auditor to write requirements and then get into the technical design. And then, you know, clearly when we create the technical design document, then we'll put it through QA and make sure that those are consistent. And then all the requirements are covered And because we deal with data, the security is a concern when we create tools. So we put the right bells and whistles in security to make sure that we don't become the source of the cybersecurity incident. It's the last thing that we want to have, coming from audit. And we do typically deploy external party to code. We also work with them to UAT and then put it into the production. So that's really the flow. And once it's in production, then we'll move the tool to IT so that they can actually look after change management. And in some cases, if the tool is good enough for stakeholder to use, we will share the tool. But clearly, our mandate for creating those tools are for audit testing, right? We're not actually creating controls for the stakeholders, first line or second line. So if they like it, if they choose to use it, yes, they can certainly, we will share that tool with them. But when we go and audit them, we'll make sure that they're actually managing the change management by themselves. If they choose to use technology to do the change management, which we usually recommend, and that is easier for them and easier for us. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is something that obviously clearly data acquisition and dictation is something that we are currently looking at augmenting audit tools. So what this is on the left picture. This is Alexa. It's Amazon's tool, and Google has Google Home, right? These tools, you can talk to them, and what you're talking to is actually artificial intelligence. And it has the database in the back. And it actually helps you to access some of the data that, this is something that we are currently looking at, whether we can use these tools to access to our own data. Rather than you actually going to the computer and then look through data, then whether it's actually possible for us to just talk to Alexa and then say, Alexa, bring me up the last 3 months of data of this particular processes, and voila, Alexa will actually put it up on your, computer screen, right? This is like the, Star Trek, movie. You're talking to the computer. We're still experimenting. There are certain things that we may not actually be able to do because of the legal restriction, and then the data retention of the Amazon itself, and dictation is also the same thing. When you actually want to write work paper, rather than typing things into a computer, you talk to your iPhone or Alexa, and then they will dictate things for you, right? Typically you find when you speak, you're very logical and you can be very succinct. But when you start writing, that's when you actually start to putting a lot of information on your sentences, and then that starts to confuse people, right? So when you dictate things, and then, when you actually look back what you dictated, that's actually much easier for you to actually review things and then, put things in perspective. And when you speak, it's much quicker. So that's the thing that we're actually trying to experiment. This is one of the augmented intelligence that we are looking at. And I'm not sure we're the only one who's doing this, but I'm sure that you're all looking at the same thing. And by the way, just a word of caution. So both, those technology companies do retain information that when you talk to them, right? So both Amazon and Apple retain data for 6 months. So that was actually a contentious point when I spoke to legal, and they decided that it's probably not worth trying to argue with Amazon and Apple, because they use our data to train their AI tools, right? So that's why it's actually the best, because they collect so much data from everyone. But do we want our confidential and classified data to be part of that data set? Not really. So that was the sort of a difficult conversation that I had with our legal. But okay, go to the next slide, please. Okay.
Michael?
So this is actually my last slide, and then we'll move to Q&A. I'm sure you have tons of questions on what I've just talked to you about. But so my view on the future of audit is the picture on the left. So this is, I took this picture from the trading floor of the bank. What they do is that they actually look at tons of data, right? So different indices, different markets. So if we create data analytics tool, bots running, testing all the time, this is what we will get. We become the guardian of all the data, and then analytics results coming out. So this is what I mean by machine augmenting. They're doing testing. We're doing analyzing. We're doing communicating. We're making decisions as to what is the right thing and where things are actually burning and where we need to send our auditor in to take a look, right? And this is real time and near time. And clearly, the picture on the right is exactly what we're doing right now, is everyone's on screen, working remotely. In this case, yes, they're in the conference room, but I mean, typically when when we work, everyone's on remote. And clearly, we're augmented by the tools that we have, whether it's the Zoom, whether it's the ACL, IDEA, Microsoft, Word, PowerPoint, and direct access to data, ClickView, Tableau, Power BI, all those things at our fingertips for us to use. And it only helps us to do audits better and faster and cheaper. So this is my view of the new normal of the internal audit and what is to come in the future. Obviously, this is just my view, okay? And I don't think this would actually happen anytime like next month. But, I expect that if we don't strive to advance our audit efforts and using augmented intelligence and tools, we will continue to stay status quo and being traditional auditor, which I don't think we have anything to gain. So with that, Fandhy, happy to answer any questions that you have or the audience has.
Okay, thank you, Mouri, for the presentation. So I think we are going to have a kind of reverse way of addressing all of the questions, because I see there's some questions are already answered by the polling result, for example. Let's see for the first one is coming from I think it's a Bapak ya, Bapak Bimantara Widya Jala ya. The first questions, can you see the screen, Mouri?
I cannot. Okay. So.
Okay. The first one is regarding the top management always requires value for money and cost effectiveness for supporting the investment in AI for the internal auditing function. So while it will need time and process to demonstrate the benefits of the investment, how to convince the management that we need to invest in such technology?
Right. So the way that this may not work for everyone. Okay, so I'm only going to tell you what I did. Okay, with AIG, because we have large budget for 400 auditors, so we are able to do zero-based investment, zero-based budget and investment, meaning that we reduce certain expenses and then reinvest that amount to the bots and data analytics. So specifically what I did was because we have global team operating in the different countries. So I've actually moved some of the resources to lower cost location. And that helped me to actually save some cost. And then I have actually reinvested that into the bots and data analytics. So overall, I have actually reduced the overall budget. And actually last year, I was able to reduce the budget close to 10%, but still be able to invest. So I don't think this can be done by the smaller team, unfortunately. And in those cases, I expect that you actually have to have some heart-to-heart conversation about what your vision is and how you see that audit function moving, from where you are now to the future. And you have to actually have a really in-depth conversation about that vision, and then have your stakeholder, like your board and audit committee and your senior management buy-in before you can start investing. But if you can't do that, then what you can do is that you can start using Excel and ACL, which doesn't really cost you much, right? You don't really have to go to creating bots, because if you can run ACL scripts, in most cases, you can run the full appropriation testing. And by doing full appropriation testing, as I said, you will find things in that. And I can guarantee you that, you will surprise your stakeholder. And they will all come back to you and say, how did you find this? Right? And that, if you keep doing that, and then they'll say, okay, now I understand why you want to do this.
And also there's suggestions to use the open source technology, for example.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, we already seeing that one of the stakeholders that we need to buy in is from the sponsorship from the management, actually, because they are giving us the budget to invest this. It's a very expensive technology, actually, but we can start with the most cheapest one and also the modest one of doing this.
Right. And the other thing that as I said, that other parts of your organization may already be doing this in using data analytics and then
yes, correct.
And so you need to work with them, piggyback on what they have already done. They may already have tools that you need, and all you have to do is to work with them and then say, can you add this function to your tool, right? So you may not actually have to spend money if they agree to take on it, or it could be just a fraction of cost that would actually require you to spend. So.
Right. Okay. I think we have a bunch of questions regarding the maturity. Let's start with the first one. Is they are asking about can we just skip several maturity level and going up to the for example from 2 to 4, for example.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. It just requires you don't have to go through the maturity ladder. You can go from 1 to 4 if you like. And if you're actually implementing, like I said, SAP, you could go to level 5 and embedded tool. Like if you buy those tools and then you start using them, that's voila, you're already in level 5, right? So.
Or you can maybe jump to the level 6, yeah, instantly.
I'd like to see that if you jump to 6 and let me actually come and visit you. I love to see it. You know, how
there's one participant suggesting the let's jump to level 6.
Yes.
All right. Another question is regarding the maybe we have some kind of like a private sectors and also the public sector. And is there any kind of different obstacles across the sectors, Mouri,
right,
of implementing this?
So the way that I see it, obviously I belong to private sector, and clearly I think we have a lot more leeway or freedom to do things compared to, you know, the government sector, because government sector, clearly your stakeholders are your people, right? And then there's rules, and you have the, you know, government and the politicians who actually limits you as to what you can do, and the also funding may be limited as to what you can do, right? But typically you have lots of data. I mean, you know, government is so rich in data, and how you want to use that data is up to you, right? And what you can do with it. But, you know, you're obviously bound by the different laws and regulations as to what you can do in terms of acquiring the data, using the data. You may actually have to go through different red tapes. So I hear when I speak to the government auditors that they're struggling to implement some of the analytics tool or even bots. I haven't actually heard any of I mean, you know, in some large governments actually they're using bots, but data analytics, clearly, I mean, depending on the agency that you actually work for, like if you work for the you know, like Ministry of Technology, you're way advanced, or, you know, military, they're really advanced, right? Because they need those tools to find things. And you know, like CIA, if you work for CIA, I mean, they have all the information that you need, right? So it varies from, I guess, the you know, government agency to agency, but in general, I'm hearing that they seem to struggle a little bit in terms of implementing this compared to the private sector.
All right. Okay. There's one interesting questions from Ms. Sinta Pratiwi, actually, Mouri, because she's asking about, well, we are now in a COVID-19 pandemic situations, and we are facing the challenge to, you know, to visiting the auditee physically and to getting the data as what we are doing in the past, right? So do you see any kind of urgency that we need to, you know, maybe change our internal process in our internal auditing, change the manual, change the procedures beforehand? We are going to use those kind of tools in augmented intelligence, for example. What kind of point of view you can share with us regarding the process?
Sure. As I said, my 400 auditors are all working from home. So no one's going to office and check the documents, right? So naturally, we have to change the protocol in terms of how do we actually get access to data? Because if the data only exists in paper format, they can't go to office, and, you know, there's no stakeholder that exists in office, right? Because they're all working from home. So we've actually changed the protocol in terms of getting the data. So we are switching everything from you know, manual data to digital data, right? So let's say, for example, if the data is being scanned, even if it's like the paper format, it's scanned, then you can see it in digital format. So we actually request the access to that, you know, scanned data. rather than seeing the physical data. And clearly, when the data exists in database, then we do request that direct access to data. So I mean that's a must. And because there's a limitation as to what you can do from your home, but access to data is the key. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there's also one interesting question. They're asking if we want to do the augmented intelligence, for example, but can we just waiting for the whole company or the institutions having the same kind of perspective of using this kind of technology? For example, if you are trying to be or standing at level 3, but our company institution are still in the less maturity level, they're asking, can we just leverage, or can we just elevate another, or can we just be the agent of change for this?
You can. In fact, we are actually becoming the agent of change in my company. So I'm not very popular with the technology guys because I keep pushing the boundary, and they say, like, no one's doing it. Why are you doing it? Right? So, and that's okay. I mean, as long as you have the support from the audit committee and your senior management, but it takes time. It takes time, definitely. But yes, I agree that you can become agent of change and help the organization to change.
Right. I think we already going through all of the questions, because most of the question I think is similar with the previous one we already answered. I think Pak Eko or Pak Pitoyo, we can just go for the next polling, maybe for the future profession of internal audited. Can you just start it for the polling? Okay, while we are seeing the final result, Pak Eko, Pak Pitoyo, Pak Nur, can we have a direct question from the floor? Pak Nur?
Sure, Pak. Sure. I think
okay. Okay, so please be prepared, because the next after this polling, I would like to open questions directly from the floor. Okay, definitely they are saying that option C is the future of the internal auditing profession, collaborate and supported by AI.
Good.
They're quite optimistic about this, Mouri.
Optimism is actually the ingredients for the success. So
definitely, I agree with you. Yes, we have number C as the future shape of us.
Apparently, you guys are listening to me very well. So
yeah, right. So we are now going for questions from the participants. Bapak Ibu yang mau bertanya mungkin bisa langsung dipersilakan ya, Pak Nur.
Siap. Saya monitor, Pak. Ya, mungkin
so we are waiting, Pak. We are waiting, Mouri, for questions directly from the participants.
Sure.
While waiting, you can just have a glass of water, maybe.
Yes, the Perrier.
Oh, Pak Hari.
Okay, questions from Fahri. Silakan Pak Hari.
Okay, thank you, Pak Fandhy. Thank you, Mouri-san,
yes,
for having this good conference, and thank you for wearing the batik from.
I love this. It feels so good.
We are proud of that. Yeah, Mouri, regarding the maturity model, because under the II capability maturity model, who were developed by Libby, McRae, and others, actually it's step of the ladder should be you should be get in ladder by ladder. You cannot jump from 1 to 3, 4 and other, because that's the way we should progress. Otherwise we will fail if you jump from 1 to 6. So my question is, in this so-called maturity model for the EI system, I think there is a little bit different. The way that they develop, I mean, when they develop the maturity model for internal audit capability model, they develop it research by research, and then they define ladder by ladder, and it should be followed step by step. You cannot jump from step 1, step 2, otherwise you will fail. And also that ladder must be achieved not only by the internal audit, but you have to you have to collaborate with your company, so they will grow mature together. We cannot mature and then the rest of the company is still in level 1, for example. That's my question. So probably the maturity that you are explaining is different with the maturity model, which is rooted in the Carnegie Mellon system, where they develop it to be achieved step by step. We cannot jump from one another.
Right. So no, that's a good point, Harry. So the only difference I think that what I shared with you is that because this is a tool-driven maturity, right? And it could be that yes, level 5 embedded tool, you can use it for, let's say, I come back to the analogy of SAP. SAP already has the embedded tool, right? So when you implement SAP, your internal audit group may be level 1, but you are actually able to use that embedded result of the embedded tool, which is a level 5. But that's not necessary the entire audit team become level 5, right?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's what I mean by driven by the tool itself. But if all of your tools actually have embedded tools, audit modules, then that your internal audit team needs to catch up and understand how to use it. So it's actually driven by the tool. If the tool exists, and if your internal audit team is willing to jump from, let's say, level 2 to level 5, that's possible, right? But then, there's a huge gap between what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, in a way that you're going to have to actually go through the steps and understand the what are the implications and downside of skipping the steps. But I mean, nevertheless, if they actually understand how to use the tool and how to best communicate the results and analyze them, I mean, by all means, I don't necessarily think the going through the steps are not the most important part. But what's most important is what value that you're producing out of the tool or the maturity that you're in, right? So once again, this is to augment what internal audit does. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and also, can you explore also to make the perspective proper to our member? I think there are so many others that internal audit can do, even though we have automized our system. But with because the problem in the governance, in the internal control is sometimes communication. For example, we cannot audit communication, we cannot test communication with this augmented problem. So please share your wisdom on this. I mean, more other broader role of internal audit in addition to having this automatic system, please.
Right. So I never said that the augmented intelligence is omnipotent, right? So it can only cover where data exists, right? And right now it's almost certain that when it's structured data, it's like, you know, transaction data in the database exists, then yes, augmented intelligence can help you. But and this is when I alluded to, you know, science and art. So like, Harry, your example of communication, it's actually art part.
Yes.
Where machine is not really equipped to deal with, right? So this is where human has to actually come in and then intervene, because communication is qualitative information, not quantitative information. It's not about the numbers. It's about the words, it's about the feelings, about how it's presented, right? So it's very difficult to deal with, you know, these things. So hence, human auditor has to deal with it, right? This is division of labor between what machine is good at, let the machine do that.
Yeah.
Right? When human auditors are good at, then humanoids would do that. Right? So I think it has to be very clear, and it is very clear now. You know, there's many limitations as to what machine can do. Right? But in large part, because as part of internal audit, we test transaction, we test financial information.
Yeah. Just to confirm, there are still a lot of roles that internal audit would
the
play.
machine can do to help us. But when it comes to qualitative information, you cannot rely on machine. They cannot do that as of now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oke, Pak Nur, ada dari peserta?
Pak Bu Dewi, Pak, selanjutnya. Bu Dewi, silakan Bu.
Silakan Bu Dewi.
Dewi Andriati.
Okay, thank you, Pak Nur, Pak Fandhy. Hi, Mouri-san. Nice to meet you. My name is Dewi. Actually, I have two questions. I'm not sure whether you discussed this or not in your early presentation, because I was late to join this webinar. My first question is, can you elaborate more and explain to us on how to manage effective coordination between first, second, and third line of defense with regard the continuous monitoring and data analytic? This is actually to ensure better assurance and also to minimize effort duplication. Like you said earlier, that sometimes the first and second lines are already have sort of like controls and tools to monitor the day-to-day business transaction, right? So how these three lines of defense can collaborate between them, And also my next question will be, of course, the power of continuous monitoring and also auditing actually lies on how good we are in setting up the parameters to also serve as early warning system, right? So do you have any tips on how to develop good indicators and also parameters for continuous monitoring, so that it can really serve us as early warning both for management and also for auditors in planning their audits.
Right.
I think that's all my question. Thank you, Mouri-san. Thank you, Pak Fandhy. Yeah.
Devi, seems like you already have an answer for both questions, but I will try my answer anyway.
I'm looking for insight from the expert.
Well,
From the general.
So to answer your first question, so first, second, and third line roles and responsibilities. First line is responsible. Well, they own the control, by the way. So I mean, that's very clear. So they own control. They need to establish control, and then they need to maintain. So when we talk about control, it's both preventative and detective controls. So both of them. right? So first line is responsible for almost everything. Second line, which is typically like finance, risk management, legal, compliance, HR, technology function, they're more of a monitoring function. So they monitor and then recommend the first line to make changes as needed, or potentially stop first line to do things that may not be beneficial to the organization. Third line is an independent testing organization that test and provide opinion about the overall control environment or specific issues that they come across. So when all these three functions do what they need to do, the overall governance of the organization is maintained and become sustainable. Now, clearly, they're not actually operating independently. Case in example, I have regular catch up with the first line and second line guys, and then I understand exactly what they're doing and what they intend to do, because that real-time information is so critical for the third line and the second line to perform their expected function of monitoring and independent testing, right? So it actually have to work seamlessly together. And you never actually want to draw a separate line and says, well, this is mine and it's not, don't come into my area. It doesn't work that way, at least for the private industry. And that, makes a lot of sense for the board and the audit committee, because they do expect those functions to work properly together. So that's the 3 lines of defense. In terms, did that answer your question?
Yeah, actually, I'm wondering in regard the continuous monitoring. Sometimes the second and also the first line already have the tools to monitor the daily transaction, right? So how is actually the role of internal for the data analytics? Should internal audit go further for the data where the first line and second line also already monitor, and how's the internal audit can add value on that continuous monitoring that have been done by the first and second?
Okay, so it's a very good point that when first line or second line already has control in place, what internal audit should do is look at the control design and then the effectiveness, right? This is the fundamental stuff. So let's say, every organization has accounts payable. And accounts payable, they pay to approved vendor, right? Because, they need to actually purchase things and then they need to pay, right? So what the first line should do is to reconcile the, before they make payments, that, payment request came from the right vendor, the amount is correct, and the timing is correct, and the things that they ordered has been delivered. All those things need to be checked. So there's a control of every one of them, and make sure that before they make payments on accounts payable, these things need to be confirmed. And if there's an exception, that needs to be approved, right? So the first line needs to have this control built in, right? Needs to observe, has there been any breach of the approval? Are they actually paying it properly? Are they not paying particular vendor excessive amount? Are they not paying certain amount? Are there any overdues or age payments? All those things are monitored by the second line. So the third line is, okay, so you have all these bells and whistles. Are they actually properly designed? Are you actually looking at the right data sets in the completeness and the timeliness of those things? So these are the different things that we do. Now, typically, when we build tools for testing, we may test, so we actually built the tool for automated tool bots that test. You push the button, the bots actually take in the information from the SAP and then reconcile with the all the vendor list or the approval list and the timeliness of the aging list, and then that actually spits out the data. So when we built this, we actually shared this with the second line and the first line. They said, wow, this is great. I mean, this is done by manual right now. Can I actually have it? So yes, in some cases, we actually build things to help them to perform their monitoring. But typically, we actually have different roles and responsibilities in terms of what we look at. So, coming back to the tool discussion, if it's good enough, if they like it, with the proper testing, after proper testing, we actually share this tool with the businesses, first line and second line. Not once again, not to build their controls, but to help them actually enhance the controls. So, but in terms of continuous monitoring, there may be some overlap between what we do, what they do, but that's okay because you have additional set of eyes actually looking at things. And if we find things before they did, first line or second line, we actually share with them. And then they say, oh, okay, I didn't know that, or, I knew that we were actually doing things. And then, so, there's additional control. Well, we're not necessarily control, but we're more of the governance processes. But, that's actually helpful for the business. And that's how I see it. Do you have a different opinion on this?
No, I think it's quite clear. Thanks, Mouri.
Sure.
Yeah, and probably the next question about the parameters. Do you have any tips on how to develop a good parameter for continuous monitoring?
So I suggest that you will start with the key controls. We call that KCIs, key control indicators. So what business typically has KPIs, key performance indicators, or key risk indicators, but not necessarily key control indicators. When they have controls, let's say controls are typically approvals and reconciliations and that type of thing, right? So if you continue to actually, if you are able to analytics to bots, you continue to look at that results, and then if actually the results spikes, and that's when you actually will go and then talk to them about it, right? So does it make sense to you?
Yeah, but sometimes the challenge is the indicators or the parameter has not directly point out to certain early warning or some indicators that we should look at, like sometimes that we found a false positive from the continuous monitoring, meaning that it's not quite good indicators. That's more on challenge in several companies that I
look at. Indeed, and that's okay because you need to continue to calibrate.
Right.
That's why change management is actually very important.
Yeah.
Right? Because
okay, thank you, Mary.
Yes.
Understood.
Okay, there's one request coming from the participant, Mouri, from Pak Bimantara Widyajala. Pak Bimantara, I think you can directly ask Mouri for your question. Silakan, Pak.
Sure.
Halo, Pak Bimantara.
Are you on mute?
Eko, tolong di-unmute, Eko.
Hello. Nanya Gogi.
Hey. I see the window.
Sorry. I just forgot to unmute myself. Mouri-san, I have one question.
Yes.
Based on your observation or experience, do you see any strong correlation between the level of maturity of the company already applied the AI, for instance, and the performance of the company itself? I mean, whether since they already applied the already invest in the advanced technology, so do you see also I mean, benefit in terms of the performance of the company as a whole, based on your experience? That's my question.
It's a very interesting question. I'm not necessarily sure, Bimantara, that there's enough data points to understand that, so, in terms of maturity level 6, right? I don't know of any company that's actually achieved maturity level 6. And hence that I'm actually unable to, compare that to their performance. But I mean, I am sure that if they have achieved to level 6, which I trust that it's perhaps IT driven company, and if the technology is the basis for their businesses, then they're actually able to self-correct the problem very quickly. So that should actually help their bottom line as well. Like, let's say companies like Amazon, for instance. I haven't actually spoken to a chief auditor at Amazon, but I'm sure that they're leveraging a lot of technology that has been built for the company, because it is a technology-driven company, right? So they have tons of data, and then they're using artificial intelligence to analyze and develop the recommendations and the shipping instructions and what to sell next. And I am sure that they have already achieved some type of embedded testing module. I wouldn't doubt it. And if they have gone to I'm not sure about AI. And so if we compare that, what they're doing, and then the stock price of Amazon, perhaps that's one of the telltale sign that how they're doing. But I don't have the information about what Amazon internal auditors are doing in terms of the augmented intelligence. I'm very curious to know. And Apple's, I'd like to know that. But that's a very good point. I will see what information that I can gather. So.
Thank you very much, Mouri-san.
You're welcome.
Probably that's a good topic for the next webinar about the specific companies that already applied the advanced technology in this area. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else, Pak Nur, that raising the hand for questions?
Belum, Pak. Mungkin kita bisa lihat dari grup chat, Pak.
Oh, okay. Because I believe all of the chats already being responded. Well, I think just one short question for Mouri. I'm just wondering in Japan maybe, or maybe in the insurance industry, as we are now waiting for the vaccine for this disease. I believe the technology companies, like you were saying just before, are now starting to to speed up to deliver new technology for us, like we are doing now in a pandemic situation. We are very depending to the telecommunications, for example, for the virtual, for the video conference, for example. And do you see that we need to like doing some kind of roadmap I'm afraid that after this pandemic situation ends, we are going back to the previous kind of ways that we're doing audit. For example, we don't have such of trigger to do the change. How do you see this, in the near future, for us, that in terms of developing our internal audit in the future?
Right. So this is a very good question, Fandhy, and this touches on the new normal that I would call that. After we overcome the corona or COVID-19. My expectation is, because we now know that we are actually able to operate from home seamlessly in most cases, right? And then people's preference, obviously looking at the work from home, majority of people who do not like to commute and find it actually more attractive to work from home. I mean, at least that's what my sense is in the U.S., where they have long commute, in particular like New York City, and then they don't want to be exposed to the public transportation as much. Asia may be a little different because the way that the pandemic is affecting is a lot different. But considering that U.S., I mean, there's already over 10,000 people died. Sorry, 100,000 people died, right? And the number of people who are infected are still going up. My feeling is that the working from home will become default, and the coming to office will become option in many parts of the U.S., and particularly in New York City. I mean, that's what I'm actually talking to my guys. So if that happens, then we really need to change the way that we operate. Whether to acquire data, whether to do the conferences and the tools that we use. So all of which will impact the way we do things, right? And when that happens, yes, we need to actually be able to use the tool more efficiently and have direct access to data where we need to test. So more trainings are needed, and I'm not necessarily sure that we can go back to the way that we actually do things. But obviously there's a difference in geography, and then a difference in terms of industry, right? So if you're a manufacturing company producing coal or the steel, I don't think you can fully work from home. You have factories, you have the inventories, you have the logistics, where you need to actually be in the site to work, right? And your auditor probably need to go and then check the inventory physically, because you just can't do that remotely, right? But many of the things that can be captured through digital data, I expect as an auditor we'll be accessing directly to those data rather than being physically checking things. So
totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we are now the last 20 minutes, Pak Nur, we have two people.
Oke, the first mungkin Pak Meldi atau Ibu Meldi ini, mungkin silakan.
Oke,
Pak Meldi, singkat Pak ya.
Ya.
Setelah ini Pak Tegar, Sangka Barka. Monggo Pak.
Terima kasih. Mr. Mouri, what are the typical objections or hindrances from stakeholders of first and second line in terms of our efforts to connect the AI tools to the data source directly? What I think is one of the examples is security issues, maybe, or do you have typical?
Yes. So two things that we actually face that I would say. So one is, to your point about the access to certain data. They hesitate because of the personal information or the company confidential data, like HR data that we typically do not actually get access to. So we do actually get around by masking some of the data that we don't need, right? So we can certainly achieve that, but it does actually take time. Second things about the technology guys are so busy that when we actually request the access, we become sort of a second to the first line or second line, right? The request. So it does take time to process. That actually puts more pressure on us delivering and building the bots. And third thing, which is more internal to internal audit, is the auditors' willingness to actually do things, right? Because they know the process, they know how to test, but putting things through the automation, it takes a lot more effort in doing what you are used to or knowing how you do things, right? Because like I said, you really need to have detailed information about the accounts. You really need to have detailed information about how the process actually operates, what pages of the application that you access, what data, where it goes. So it's very different than the normal audit processes that you go through. And very often you need to speak to multiple stakeholders, not just your business process owners, but technologies and compliance and legal. So some people hesitate to do that, and they'd rather actually go back to what they know how to do it. So that's the internal hurdle that I feel that we need to go over. So.
Okay, I think that's one of the hindrances, to realize this.
Okay, thank you, Pak Meldi. I think we can go for the second one.
Sure.
Baik, Pak Tegar, silakan, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Mouri. I'm Tegar. I would like to ask about the success indicator. Can you tell us about the what is the success indicator, maybe the general success indicator in transforming our audit process into a level 1 to 6 maturity, or perhaps maybe you can share us step by success indicator in step by step of that maturity, maybe, so we can precisely know what is what can we expect, what can we achieve in every step, in every process that we develop. Sometimes we know a little bit about, okay, we achieve this, we achieve that, but in specific we don't know exactly, is it we already achieved that or is it not good?
Right.
That's all.
So that's a very good question, Tegar. I'd say that I don't really have the success factor defined on each level, and it's more from a point of view of what tools that you use and what levels of the automation that you're in, right? So, but really the true success factor that I see on each level, and how the team feels good about doing it is that what things that we find. And like I said, it's a wow factor from the stakeholder, and them asking us like, how did you find these things that we're not even able to find it? Like I said, first line actually owns these controls. So they should be able to find it. They know what they're doing, quote unquote, right? So, and we find things that when they don't find things, that surprises people. To me, that's, and if you continue to actually, find things by using data analytics and bots, and helping the, first line and second line to enhance their control, and then them coming back to us and ask more questions about how did you do this, or can you share with us your tool? To me, those are all success factors. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, but actually we have, our management always confront us with cost and value, cost and benefit analysis in terms of investment in AI or in IT. So if we could maybe have some general setup, maybe so we can provide the management with our achievement and general guidelines, so we can compare it and we can say that we achieved this, and we have paid your in it. So maybe you can share something about that.
Yes. So as I said, I have my annual budget. I've always reinvested into data analytics and then automation with zero-based budget, or even reducing the budget and then still be able to reinvest, right? So I mean, from the management point of view, okay, so Mouri-san, you're reducing the budget, but how do you actually still be able to reinvest? So you need to be a little creative in terms of saving the cost, but still be able to actually, so I've actually reduced the number of auditors in certain location, and then move them to a lower cost location and save money, reinvest that, and continue to actually expand the audit coverage. Because from the audit committee, so you have to understand that the different stakeholder has different needs, right? Audit committee wants us to cover more.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And management wants us to reduce the cost, but still be able to come up with good findings to help them, right? So in order to actually satisfy these conflicting needs, you have to be a little creative. And so our answer is really moving to bots and then data analytics, and moving from sample-based testing to full population testing, because then you will come up with some issues, like I said, with wow factor, like how did you find these things? And we've never actually been able to find it, and we can also tell them that we actually looked at everything. So you don't have to worry about anymore, because typically when you actually do sample-based testing, the typical question comes like, okay, so what more do we actually have, right? But when you actually test everything, you say, well, there's nothing more, right? This is it. Yeah. So that's actually a much higher level of assurance that we're actually providing, which is the value, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Pak Nur, do we have another?
Okay, 5 minutes.
Or do we?
Bu Resti, monggo the last question, Bu.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Mouri-san, maybe just a quick question. Perhaps you can share with us how your auditors are able to actually gather the alternative data sources to enrich our big data, especially with regards to the GDPR regulations. Thank you.
Yes. So it's good to see you, Restiana. it's a very good question, and we actually trying to get around to GDPR by not actually having the PII direct access. But like I said, in some certain cases, we do have to mask certain information before they can get it to us, right? Because like HR information, we certainly don't want to use them. So what level of the information that we need, I think, depending on the test that we perform. And we try not to violate any of the security protocol that we have. But it's so it's the individual cases that we need to look at. But generally speaking, they grant us access as long as they feel comfortable that we're not actually violating any of the security protocol. So, and it's, but once again, case by case basis, we actually do need to look at this. So, and typically, IT will push back if they feel that, because we have the corporate security and then the IT security guys, we work together with them, right? So, and then, we say, well, here's the data set that we need. They said, no, you can't have it. And then, so what data set can we actually have it, right? So it's
right.
a good point.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Ibu Resti, and also explanations from Mouri. I see also there's a lot of questions, Pak Nur, regarding the technical kind of aspect of these implementations, like the security considerations, and as per Ibu Resti question is regarding the compliance issue. I believe we can deliver another sessions to elaborate this further, and starting from Mouri.
More technical.
Yeah, one thing that's very important, when you actually implement this, is to work with those, relevant functions, because you cannot just do this alone, right? So technology, IT guys are very important to work with. Because we have actually a group that looks after bots and data analytics within technology. So they actually do run all the security scans. We don't do that ourselves because we don't actually want to do that, when technology guys do it. And so the compliance is important because of the, the GDPR, and within the technology, we do have the security team that they will actually look at the security of the data that we have access to. So, I suggest that you work with these relevant teams and then make sure that they feel comfortable what you're doing. Because otherwise, you don't want to cause a problem within the organization by creating those bots, right? And you become the audit issue by yourself.
Well, with that is the closing remark from you, Mouri, and also one of the quotes that I would like to reiterate. Actually, the optimism, as you said, is the ingredient for success.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Okay,
and,
I think,
and also persistence is the key.
Right. Okay. Optimism and persistence, for the ingredients for success. Right. Well, with all the explanation from Mouri-san, I would like to thank Mouri-san for this very, very good sharing for us. I believe this is already 2 o'clock, in Tokyo.
That's correct. And I'm feeling hungry. So.
And Mouri-san is very generous to give his time to us to explain about this very interesting topic. With that, I would like to thank and also to close these sessions. And maybe Pak Nur, do you have anything else to inform as per the announcement? Please, Pak.
Sure, Pak. Oke, Bapak Ibu, mohon waktu sebentar. Setelah ini buka videonya untuk kita capture. Sedikit pengumuman dari kami seperti biasa. Tidak bosannya kami akan mengumumkan mengenai Oke, sebentar Bapak Ibu. Oke. Kami kembali mengingatkan kepada Bapak Ibu yang telah jadi member dan belum melakukan renewal, atau silakan mememberkan anggotanya bersama-sama kita supaya kita mendapatkan banyak benefit mengenai ini. Kenapa? Dengan bergabung jadi anggota banyak sekali manfaatnya, di mana kita tergabung dalam komunitas dunia. Kita jadi member dunia, we are the member of the global organization, di mana as member we have bergabung dengan iGlobal, penetap international standard dan seterusnya. Terus kemudian kita bergabung dengan 200.000 member di seluruh dunia dan 3.000-an 3,000 more in Indonesia. Oke, we terus bertambah jumlahnya. Terima kasih untuk partisipasinya, dan kami juga terus menginvite Bapak Ibu untuk jadi member supaya kita bisa mendapatkan banyak hal seperti ada local networking seperti ini, itu sebenarnya mendapatkan terbitan-terbitan terkini dan sebagainya. Ini saya skip aja. Benefit jadi member misalkan full akses terhadap IPPF secara free dan juga dalam berbagai bahasa, mau bahasa Turki, mau bahasa Cina ada, tapi bahasa Indonesia pastinya ada. Ini bisa dijadikan sebagai rujukan. Terus kemudian mendapatkan informasi mengenai magazine, kemudian ada mengenai topik-topik terkini yang sangat relevan yang pastinya sudah kita translasi. We have translated into local language like remote auditing from the global. We already translated and we already published in the global. You can download it. Every member can download it through website iGlobal and through website Indonesia. And then this is the next. Wait for the. I think just a few days more. Next few days, there is an announcement of the big one, the 3 lines model. The updating from the 3 lines of defense model, the previous one that we already know, and then currently iGlobal will will issue the 3 lines, the new one, and we already make a translation. Wait just for just a few days next. Okay, this is for the another benefits. We access to webinar like this by free as our dedicated to member to serve the member better. Like every Monday we have a II forum, and then international forum like this, and then training by webinar and so on. So many benefit from us to serve the members. So we invite for all the participants in here to renew the membership that already registered before. We understand maybe you forget so many activity now, so forget to make a renewal. So we invite you again, and you can contact to the office to get the how to renewal or how to register as a member. Oke, mungkin itu aja Bapak Ibu semua. Thank you Mr. Mouri.